Rev up your engines! Alright, today I got a problem rather common in cars. If this car sits for a few days, the battery's dead, you got to jump start it. So something's draining the battery. Now, this happens to be a Suzuki, so I'll probably figure out what's wrong. I may or may not be able to fix it because they pulled out of the United States 12 years ago, and getting parts for these things is a pain in the hiney. It was even bad when they were here. Now they're gone, so not exactly a smart idea to buy one, but I got it cheap. We're going to try to figure out what's draining the battery. Now you never know. It could be a bad battery, it could be lots of things. So we're gonna start here. We're gonna open the hood. We're gonna check the battery. Well, first we gotta take all this crap off because it's on top of the battery. Brilliant design. And here's the battery. We'll hook up our battery tester. Positive to positive. Negative to negative. See what's happening. It's 12 volts. It's a standard battery made in Korea. Cold cranking amps are 650. So we'll lower that to 650, and here we go. It says, suggest to replace the battery. Now this is a pretty new battery. The problem with many testing machines is they give you a false negative. This battery's only been here a short period of time. It's so low because it's getting drained that it's giving us a false reading. So first thing we're gonna do, test the charging system. We'll move it over here where we can reach it. Is perfectly fine. So now we know for a fact charging system's working, but the battery, it says replaced because it's so low, which is often a false reading. There's got to be something draining this battery. So we're gonna get my handy amp checker. This does amperage, AC and DC. Then we will clamp it all the way around the negative battery terminals coming off. 0.368, 0.37 amp draw. Now the normal accepted draw is 0.05, and this is a lot more than that. So there is a giant draw somewhere. It can be anywhere. So start looking for odd things. Things that don't work, that used to, things that stay on when they're not supposed to. And I noticed one thing in this car. When I shut it off, it kept dinging. And look, the car's turned off, the door's open, it's dinging. It should not ding until you put the key in the ignition switch. We shouldn't be sitting there dinging. We'll put the seat belt on so it won't ding much, right? Now, if we open the door now, it's supposed to ding, which it does. But when we take the seat belt off and turn the car off, right? Now, everything should be turned off, but we can notice the radio is still on. It should not be on, and when we open the door, this baby's dinging. Since it is dinging, as soon as we open the car door, even without the key in, hey, it could easily be a broken ignition switch that even though you turn it off, the electric part isn't shutting power off. So let's check that possibility. This panel off to access things better. Millimeters. And this pops out. Doesn't want to pop out, but it will. Cheaply made these, they didn't snap out right. Take this cover off to access the switch. And off comes the top and the bottom. Unplug the ignition switch inside, and look. Now the drain has dropped down to 0.003, which is well within parameters. 0.05 is the most, so that's it. In this case, the ignition switch is bad because it's acting like when you take the key out, that it's still in the on position. So it's allowing electrical stuff to run, and that's what's draining the battery. Once I unplug that switch, it's no longer connected to the electrical system because I unplugged the electric part. And as you can see, the drain is not totally acceptable, hardly anything at all. But like I said, this is a Suzuki. They haven't sold these things in the United States for ages, so good luck trying to find an ignition switch. Now, as you can see as we go inside here, changing out the ignition switch isn't that big of a deal. It is right here. You just take a couple screws out, it pops off, and you put a new one in. So in this case, if you're going to park it any length of time, you can just take off the battery terminal. Take it off. And of course, now as you can see, the drain is 0, 0, 0. There's no drain at all because the battery's not connected and it won't drain. Now these clamp amp meters aren't that expensive. I think I spent 80 bucks on this one. It's an Intertech. You can use it on your house too because it does AC and DC. You find if you really have a short, and the reason this is really good is because it's non-intrusive. You don't have to take anything apart. You just clamp it on. on modern cars, when you disconnect the battery, all kinds of wacky stuff can go on. It might idle poorly, it might not shift right, you might have to do a computer relearn. This does it without taking anything apart. Just clamps on the wires, and it can measure all kinds of things. In this case, we were measuring the amp flow. Now, the ignition switch should not have any power going through it when you take the key out. That's why I was able to figure this out so fast, because it's just sitting there, and I opened the door, it shouldn't be dinging, right? Here's my matrix. Look, when they're just sitting there, they don't make any noise until you put the key in. That was making noise without the key in, meaning that somehow it was being powered up. Now, a lot of things could theoretically do it, but the most common is a broken ignition switch. When you turn it in the off position, the electrical part breaks and it doesn't go off. It keeps sending power by the contact being worn and still sends electricity through. With some relatively inexpensive equipment, you can see if you got a battery drain. And two, probably not a good idea to buy a Suzuki in the United States. I can't get parts for this thing, right? So he's just gonna have to disconnect the battery when he lets it sit. Now, this is a knock-around vehicle for him, so if they're gonna let it sit for 2 or 3 days, they can just take the battery terminal. Believe it or not, if you watch my other video on this vehicle has 105 trouble codes. So it's not something you want to invest too much money into. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Well, you remember the videos I've made about Toyota and the melting mirrors and plastic parts on the car, and Toyota says it's a thermal event? Well, at least one of your viewers got new mirrors, right? Mark writes, Scotty, today my niece finally talked to a Toyota USA rep, and after many discussions, they decided in a good faith gesture to replace all the melted plastic parts at no charge, and the dealership only charged $250 labor. We consider this a win. I thought you'd like to know this. Have a great day. Mark. Now they're getting the plastic pieces replaced, right? Here's what kind of gets me. Toyota gave them the parts. The dealer charged them $250 to put it on. Why did not Toyota pay to do it? They are basically admitting the mirrors and the side plastic melted because we didn't make them right? Instead of calling it a thermal event, they admitted it and they gave them the parts, right? But they made her pay $250 labor. Why didn't they do it free? What is wrong with these people? She paid 40 grand for the car, only had it 3 months, and the stuff was melting on it. Yeah, okay, they gave them the parts, but making them pay the dealer $250? Why didn't Toyota pay that $250? I guess they don't want a precedence, right? Where somebody, oh, well, you did his, now you're going to have to do mine, right? Well, let me tell you something. At least anybody with the same problem with the melting plastic Toyotas, send a link to Toyota and say, mine's doing it, I want it fixed too. If enough people do that, a whole bunch of you might get them free. And I'd say, we like the gesture, but please, could you do it for free and not charging us $250 labor to replace something you didn't make right that melted? Yes, in California, we know they're insane. Well, the level of insanity just went up another notch. There's this thing that they're called daylighting, which is causing a new law that California drivers have to know so they don't get a ticket next year when they start enforcing it. And believe it or not, listen to this. This is a law that they're going to start enforcing. They give warnings now, but they're going to start enforcing next year. Drivers will need to get in the habit of leaving a 20-foot gap between their vehicle and any marked or unmarked crosswalks. Marked or unmarked crosswalks. Well, that's great. You can't park your car within 20 feet of a marked or unmarked crosswalk, whatever that means, right? Our society has gotten so insane. Well, they're worried about pedestrians getting hit as they cross the road, and if they're in the close than 20 feet to the crosswalk, you can't see that well, and the drivers won't see you walking the crosswalk, blah, blah. You can't save people from themselves, you know? Geez, what are they going to have next? You know, warning on buildings. Warning, this is a tall building, you know? Do not climb to the top and jump off. You may injure yourself. And they're putting those suicide nets on the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, you know? I mean, what are they going to do? Put suicide nets around everything that's more than 20 feet tall? In this case, you can't park within 20 feet of these crosswalks, whether they're marked or unmarked. What do you know? What is an unmarked crosswalk, right? I mean, they've totally lost their minds in California. What are they going to do? Make it a law that everybody that comes in California has to enter this bubble and walk around in a giant bubble like the Bubble Boy to try to prevent them from being injured while they're visiting California? I don't know. They've lost their minds entirely. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.